There's more information readily available to every single person today than ever in the history of our world. And yet, if you don't know what question to ask, you can't find it. If you don't know what's true or not true, it doesn't help you. And if you don't know what to do with the information to action it, it doesn't mean very much. So those are the three areas that I think are real plays for us in the future.
Hey, the opening question, I'm kind of curious. You've interviewed, I don't know, probably thousands of people in the last couple of decades. As you step back and look at the whole thing, is there any one sort of giant learning or takeaway? I mean, there's so many great stories in the interviews and all that, but when you look at all of it, what's a big learning from interviewing that many people for you?
The first thing that comes to mind, and the thing that I actually take the most comfort in, whether it's interviewing people who've done amazing things, I like to speak to courageous, bold people who are willing to kind of go against the grain. But also I read a lot of biographies. I read a lot of history. And what I take a lot of comfort in is knowing that each of these people who have done remarkable things, who have seen huge successes, it really is a snapshot in time. And I used to think that, like I think many people, that there's almost a linear path, or that past success somehow means that we deserve future successes, or that things would always be on the rise and there wouldn't necessarily have to be a major reset or a fall. And so interviewing these remarkable people, and again, reading biographies, I take a lot of comfort in knowing that a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 year dip, it's going to happen. It's part of the process. If anything, it's part of what's next. And now I kind of release myself of the pressure of feeling that somehow success has to stack upon success, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. That's a pretty good learning. And just because you did something once, there's a reason why entrepreneurs that were successful in one space, when they start something up that's different, they fail most of the time. It doesn't just stack. And one thing I think that does stack is experiential wisdom. So you've had some business challenges where, hey, things are going great, and then wham, here comes a pandemic or a great recession or whatever, and it resets everything. So even going through that, I think there's so much we can learn that we can apply to future success. So my single biggest, I really tried and it didn't work out. I wrote off $27 million. It's like, okay. However, what I learned going through that, I can, if I choose, and I'm sort of choosing that, I absolutely can apply those learnings to make more money than that back in the future with what I'm doing. So I always think there's something to learn. Like, what did you learn as you went through some of these challenges, and even set up a challenge that, we can share with the listeners that you're applying now to create even more value?
So part of my journey, I started my agency when I was 23. So 23 years old. I didn't go to college or university. I went to I went to film school. I went to a private technical film school. I got a job right away in television. I was in a real hurry. Got married young. We had my first daughter young. I was ready to go. And so 23, I start my firm. And the first few years were really challenging, but let's set that aside. There's the startup phase. What I didn't realize through 2013, 14, 15, we were riding a wave. I was riding a wave. And so I started my video agency before broadband, before social media, before YouTube could play anything longer than 2 or 3 minutes. And so I didn't quite recognize that as video became more prominent, as companies invested more in it, we were really niched and we were really specialized on a type of service that we rode the wave up, which was great. We became a multi-million-dollar company. We're project-based. So every year we were replacing those projects, replacing that revenue. It was not based on annual recurring revenue. But then by 15, 16, 17, really our market was commoditizing. Really, there was way more competition. Companies were willing to go down market and spend less. And what I didn't recognize at the time was I had built a company where video was our specialty. And our whole value prop is, why work with a generalist when you could work with a specialist? Why would you work with an agency who frankly outsources it to us? Why not just come to us directly? But that was all starting to end. And so I had spent 2016 through 2020 adding more services, trying new things, blowing out our team. And I added so much complexity to the business by trying to do more. I ended up cannibalizing our high value and our high profit margin services. And what I didn't realize was that niche, that real specialized focus, that wave we were about to ride, that allowed us to ride. I didn't spend enough time realizing that that was the key to our success and finding my next niche, finding my next market that was rising. And so that was a big mistake that, frankly, COVID forced us to reset on. And it took a lot of reflection to even realize that. But that was something that I learned, and we talk about mistakes made. I will not make that mistake again. Being a generalist in a commoditized industry is not fun for me.
Yeah, and what you're doing now at Sales Loop, describe at a high level what that is and what your motivation is for driving value through this company.
So our number one focus from day one, in 2006 when I started, was I wanted to ensure that we were saying the right thing to the right person in the right way at the right time. And because we were so focused on video, which is a linear storytelling technique, we had to create something that would earn someone's attention to even look at the video. We would have to earn the click. When you start watching, we would have to earn your attention for the first 3 to 10 seconds. We would have to hold you for the entire story, whether it's a 30-second ad or whether it's a 10 or 20 or 1 hour presentation. We had to hold your attention. And so we focused really, really highly on tone and pace and feeling and the language we're using and how we could, almost like an orchestra conductor, see rises and falls and experience. And so we looked at video really different than I think most people do. We focused really heavily on trying to align the one message to the one audience at the right time, saying the right things to retain our audiences. And so that was great training. Now, flash forward to what we do at Sales Loop today. We help 7, 8-figure B2B businesses. We help them basically do that for all forms of their branding, of their marketing, of their sales collateral. But we focus on the sale. Our main driver was, how do we retain the viewer? How do we get them to walk away taking a certain action or feeling a certain thing? And today, with the branding work we do, with the content marketing work we do, it's the same thing, but we're now much more focused on the sale. Everyone needs to influence a prospect or a customer. You need to try and win back past customers. You need to try and prompt people for referrals. You might be recruiting in a really tight market, high skill or high competition talent. You might be looking for investors. Each one of these, in my mind, follows that same process that we established years ago. But now we're focusing on trying to get whatever I call the sale. We're trying to sell someone on a concept, on an idea, on taking action.
Yeah, a lot of our listeners, they're leading companies from startup to quite large, or they have leadership positions in sales, marketing. And it seems to me that lately there's so much more noise, especially with AI, but noise on the marketing side. It is ridiculous. How do you think about cutting through that noise, and where is marketing going? I have my thoughts. I'd love to share that in a minute, but I'm just curious. What do you see happening with all of this? The evolution, really, yeah.
Yeah. So I started back in the day before we could even target. I remember being at a conference where someone said, "Can you believe you could do a Google ad?" And they were literally saying, for 13 cents, someone might type in, find a lawyer, not even in the location at that time. It was just like, find a lawyer. And for 13 cents, my law firm can come up, and be number one. And so I come from the world kind of pre-segmentation. And so we have been very lucky for the last 10 years. Any sales lead, marketing lead, business executive, we know that these platforms allowed us to target consumers or other targets really, really well. And we got very used to having a lot of data. Now, there was kind of a false sense of security because being able to attribute a certain sale or a certain lead to a platform or a keyword or a campaign. I mean, we spent years and we spent so much time trying to build these attribution models to prove that there's ROI, to prove that there's value. Because from my mind, it's not about do we spend the money or not. It's where makes the largest impact. Where do we get the most impact for the dollars we're spending? But truthfully, we're coming out of an era where we do not have, because of privacy laws, we're not able to target quite as effectively. Because of what the platforms, Google, Meta, programmatic, whatever your ad spend is going towards, they just want you to basically write them a check. The money goes into some kind of black hole. They do something with it and won't tell us what it is or show us any information and they say, trust us. It's okay. Just trust us. And then hopefully they send us enough business that we just keep writing that check. And so frankly, where we're going with AI, where we have been going with these platforms and with our advertising is we have to be more focused on brand. We have to be more focused on authentic, real connections than ever before. And then we have to be really kind of tricky and use these platforms to try and liquidate some of those costs, cover some of those initial costs, bring people back. And I can share some systems we use to do that. But we're moving out of an era, and we are moving into a new era where these types of connections and more organic or activities that you frankly can't track as well, and you can't even prove ROI as well. We're moving into that era, and the era of just mass information and mass content. There's more information readily available to every single person today than ever in the history of our world. And yet, if you don't know what question to ask, you can't find it. If you don't know what's true or not true, it doesn't help you. And if you don't know what to do with the information to action it, it doesn't mean very much. So those are the three areas that I think are real plays for us in the future.
Yeah, and that's totally in alignment with what I'm thinking. The trusted relationship-based network that we have and then building on that, I think is where it's going. Because if I want a service, whether it's I need a lawyer, I need an accountant, I need a vehicle, everybody out there is the best that ever was in doing that thing. So who do you believe anymore, right? So I think this whole trusted relationship-based network and building a community around any business is where it's going to go, because now I can trust that. I've actually gotten to a place where I literally don't believe virtually anything I see at first glance. It's all spin, manipulation, wanting you to take a position. I see things now, and in my head, it's like, well, maybe. I mean, if I run it through my filters and take time to look at it, I can make a decision around it. But that's a challenge. And the other part of this, Mark, is with younger kids today, young adults. That I'll regularly hear, hey, they'll see my success, somebody else's success that they're pointing to, and they say, I want that. How can I get that? And I always say, well, isn't the better statement, how can I earn that? Going forward, because you have to build into it. And by the way, you have to start and you actually have to do something. So what I'm finding a lot of in this culture, we've drifted, I think, in the wrong direction, which isn't full on value creation. It's a direction of, I want to be seen a certain way. I want to make as much money as I can, as quickly as I can, and get out of it, not really create the value to solve the problem. So this has to come up in your work, where people want you to do work to get their message out there. And what they really care about is, how much money can I get for working as little as possible? And by the way, there's quite a number of CEO groups out there, networking groups, where that's all they talk about, how little we're working and how much money we're making. And what I wish for all of them is that everybody that does business with them treats them exactly the same way, so they can see what it feels like. So, what are your thoughts on that? Being seen a certain way to make a bunch of money versus leaning in to really solve a problem, create huge value passionately around that, which is where I believe the longest term best returns financially actually come from?
So I think it's challenging depending on the industry you're in and the size of your company. I think you would agree that if you have 10,000 employees across different divisions, different geographies, servicing different clients, this can be hard to have something so purpose driven, because it's not only about the purpose and the vision and the mission. It's not only about what the CEO is saying on shareholder calls or what have you, but it also comes down to each VP or SVP or general manager of each department, and then each individual manager, and then each employee. So I recognize that. Now, I come from more of a corporate background. We've been fortunate to work with 300 different companies in 29 industries, from pre-revenue bootstrap startup to national airlines, the investment firm for our national pension plan that has $450 billion of assets under management. So when I say that, I see kind of all sizes. Now, I love working with medium-sized organizations. I love working with visionaries who have a vision and believe in something. And when you bring them a challenge, when you bring them something that they're doing wrong, it irks them that they can't fix it. They need this fixed. Those are the types of leaders that I feel will always win, because whether I agree with their perspective or not, or whether I agree with what they're doing, at the very least, they have something to say. And so I do struggle with either business leaders or entrepreneurs who are extremely focused on performance-based campaigns or tactics, who are focused on monthly or quarterly short-term results, and who won't either give enough time for their team or for people to kind of play in the business, who won't give us a chance to fail, even if it means we're going to learn something really great, or who won't give, in the type of work we do, the chance for us to make iterative improvements to optimize over time. If you expect it to win every time right out of the gate, in the first 30 days, you're going to eliminate a lot of things that I do. And frankly, if other agencies are willing to even say yes to that, they're going to fail, in which case you're going to be mad. And the reason why our industry gets such a bad rap, so many marketing agencies get a bad rap, is in my opinion, they won't be clear to what is and is not possible, what we can or cannot track, the value we actually drive, which often isn't even monetary. And I can give you an example of this from a recent project we did if you want. But, so here's an example. So for my network, one of my past clients decided to start a new national nonprofit. And so the founder, Janet Coe, really struggled to go through perimenopause and menopause as a senior executive in a large corporate environment as a woman. She was struggling with that. And it wasn't part of the common language. It wasn't part of the common kind of corporate environment. And over the years, she noticed that other women were struggling with this as well. So she decided to start a foundation around this. And so, small world, she was one of my past clients at a long-term care and retirement community company, a large national company. And she happened to partner with Sun Life, who's a large insurance and group benefits company and a retirement company. She happened to partner with them, and they were our clients as well. And so there was this project where we were doing this whole launch for this report. We were doing this whole launch for this project. And we were bringing in executives from across the country. They were flying in for the day to be a part of this campaign so we can sit down with them and have real conversations. Now, from my perspective as a producer or as a marketing person or as a brand strategist, well, what do I want to focus on? I want to make sure we say the right things to the right people at the right time and the right way. But we could talk about anything. And so this project, what it really came down to, we realized, is that, frankly, we only had about an hour and a half to get all of these senior executives in one room at one time. So while I could have focused on the lighting, or I could have focused on the message or all of these things, the truth is that when you are working with people who have such a limited amount of time and where they are trusting to me and to our company, their reputation, we need to get this right. And so my team and their team and all teams, our number one focus is what's possible within the hour and a half, not what we hope will happen. George Washington always said, let's focus on the reality, not what we hope things will be. And so what can we do in this hour and a half? How can we create the feeling and the brand? How can we create the environment where they walk in comfortable right away to get the most out of their time? How do we create the questions or the structure that actually serves each of their speaking styles or purpose? Like, just how do we value engineer this time that we have? Yes, we have to be great on budget. Yes, the project has to be successful. People have to watch it. But truthfully, when we did our debrief with the team, we all agreed that the biggest impact we had was that these executives were walking into an unknown environment, kind of worried about their reputation and what they will look like and what they will say. And we had everything so ready. We had all of the set done. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. We brought in all the stuff. We did it at a hotel next door to their offices so they could walk across the parking lot. They walked in. Moment one, we greet them. We sit them down. We made them feel comfortable. We made them look good. That was the value we actually drove for them. And it has nothing to do really with ROI. It has to do with the fact that we get paid to make people look good. And that was what we did.
Yeah, and I could make a pretty good argument that getting that right, they go back to their environments and create even more value. It elevates the emotional energy, the connectedness going on, strengthens relationship to be able to get together and create even more value however they're doing it on the material side as well. So I think those things really matter. They go to culture. I've always thought of emotional energy as the scarcest commodity on the planet. So every time we elevate it, it supercharges everything else that we do. What does creating value mean to you? If as you think about that, I look at it and I say, I want to drive, and this is my purpose. And I want to get to yours here in a bit. But my purpose is driving holistic value creation behaviors out in the world, for-profit, nonprofit, families, all of that. And I do it because when I age out someday, and hopefully it's a long ways down the road, I want it to be an amazing world to interact with. I don't want to have a future that's Mad Max that I'm going to be running around in. Give me the rules and I'll figure out a way to win, but I want it to be incredible. But as you think about creating value, what does that mean to you?
So one question I ask everyone I work with, what challenge are we solving for, or what opportunity are we pursuing? I'm a problem solver at heart. And so and my team doesn't quite like this, and it's very challenging to scale a business this way. But I will actually force our team to shift our process, our approach based on our client we're working with. So if you and I were working through a brand strategy process, if I don't understand your true value, your true motivations, your vision, your culture, your context, everything that you're doing, then I can't articulate that for you. I can come up with something kind of nice, and you might put it on and you might wear it, but it's not really your company. It's not really your team. It's not really true. And I've tried it where it's aspirational and we hope people will live up to it, but then eventually leadership doesn't invest to live up to those claims, or they don't deliver to clients to those claims, or they kind of fall short. And then what is this worth if we're kind of just lying, So I'm this problem solver who comes in, and we will, even with our main point of contacts, if they're comfortable with it, we will do a disc profile, we will do analysis. Because, for example, as a branding company, you might think logo. You might think colors, and that's part of it. That's a big part of it. But that's something that designers do really well. And so we'll bring in some designers. But if you're in a low aesthetic industry and you do not value aesthetics, and I keep bringing you all these aesthetic pieces, and I talk about feeling and tone, or I look at this and look at that, I'm gonna drive you crazy. You're not gonna understand what we're doing, why we're spending time on this, why we're spending money on this, why this is important. And so if I understand that about you, if that's something that you don't value, then there's two things. Either it's not important to you or your industry, in which case I shouldn't spend too much time focusing on it, or it's not important to you, but you're hiring me because it's important to me, and I'm your who's bringing you this component. And so I could probably scale up the company a lot faster if I didn't try to be such a concierge to each person we worked with. But in my experience, our work would suffer, the client experience would suffer. And within 6 to 12 months, clients will kind of forget about this. I'm sure you've hired consultants who come in and do these great exercises and you love it and you go back home and then you never use it. You don't leverage it. It's just this book or white paper or report sitting somewhere. That thought drives me crazy because I don't want to spend my time, which frankly in a creative strategic environment, I am committing my energy, my life, my love. I'm committing my team's energy, their life, their love to the projects we're working on. And frankly, I would just rather go work with someone who really values us. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but that's what it means to me.
Yeah. Well, in working with clients, if we don't bring the value, they won't ask us to come back. And I also think sometimes there's a challenge in getting clients to connect the dots to the work that you do. And any consultant actually does. So consultants, marketing, all of that can bring huge value. And I don't even know if it's 30-40% of the time where they give the full credit to, wow, that actually really worked. And here's why it worked. They just keep plowing forward. And it's a budget item to kind of spend it. You've done a lot of interviews, and one of the things that I believe is that everyone on the planet, every adult, has thought of something more deeply than I have, or figured out something I haven't, and it's just waiting to be found. And it doesn't matter who it is, but most folks in conversations, if they'll have a confirmation bias, they'll put somebody in a box, they don't get what they're looking for, they immediately move on. And I'm always interested when I'm talking with folks, how do I create an environment in this conversation where I can get the best and figure out what that value is that we can actually build on together if we choose to. With your interview style and how you come at this, what is your process for getting the most out of team members or individuals when you're interacting with them to not shut them down, but get them to release their value in the conversation?
That's quite interesting. In the context specifically of my team or employees, or just interviewing in general?
Anyone, just how do you actually do that? Because you talk about asking the right questions to unlock new ways of thinking. A lot of leaders, a lot of facilitators kind of shut things down. They either push it off, or they guide them down to where there's only one answer, and now they're nervous about getting the answer to the test wrong. How do you get them to basically show their value in a conversation where they're comfortable enough and create that? So it's not your team members, not a specific customer. Just how would you advise our listeners to interact with others in a way that releases the value they have that's hidden?
Yeah. So first, I mean, it helps to set clear goals for yourself or what you're hoping to get out of the conversation. And for me, that comes down to perspective. Having being in television and being in marketing and branding and the industry that I'm in, something that's not often spoken about, though, is the power that I have as a storyteller to focus on perspective. Whose story is this? And ultimately, who am I serving through this conversation? So I've had 4 podcasts. They have had different forms. They've had different topics. My current podcast, How to Sell More, I'm very careful to create content for my audience, because in the 30 minutes I have this speaker, this guest, this specialist, I could go down all kinds of rabbit holes and it'll be amazing. But if, frankly, there's no on-ramp, if I'm not meeting my listeners where they're at, if I'm not speaking their language, if I'm not breaking things down in simple enough terms, or if it's too simple and they know it already, they're going to bounce. So I'm very careful to think of, who am I making this for? Who is the conversation for? If it's a performance review, then this isn't a conversation for me. This is a conversation for the person across the table from me. And so I come into it with my goals that they understand certain things, that they maybe make certain changes. But I know that this is for their benefit. I'm here to serve them. And so I think that that's really the place to start, not just to bounce into something and kind of hope it works out. So I've learned over the years to not be so afraid to ask questions. And I don't know if it was that I was afraid of what the answers might be, but I think I was afraid to ask such pointed or direct questions. Or if someone sidesteps my answer, to ask it a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, or to put someone in the spot if it's appropriate to say, why are you sidestepping my question? Why aren't you giving me a clear answer? And so you have to judge the room. But the person asking the question is the one in control. And if it's my meeting, or if I'm meeting with a prospect or a client and I'm hoping to give them value, then it's my duty to ask whatever question I need to ask. So I'm in a position to either understand the next question, or to understand what they're speaking about, or to hold them to account in some way. And so that is something that I have learned quite boldly, that you know what, it's not my job to proactively curb or hedge on the question. They have the right not to answer it if they don't want to. And I have the right to ask it a second or third time if I want to, until finally it's so uncomfortable or it's just not helpful that we can choose to move on. But their lack of answering says something. My willingness to ask over and over again says something. And then the audience or whoever's present can kind of decide.
Yeah. And what I like about what you're saying, so the interview, meet them where they're at, make them comfortable enough that releases their wisdom so the audience gets value out of it. And if we're meeting in a business environment, internal team, external team, whatever, be clear about, we're here to create this value. Are we all in agreement on that? And then go forward and discover it.
If I can share, the more that I've done this, the more comfortable I become. But a great example is last September, I was in Tampa at a conference, and there was someone. It was late. It was after dinner. I think we were grabbing a drink out on the patio, and they kind of stepped in the conversation. And I was speaking to someone on my left about something they said, and I was kind of calling BS on it. I was kind of saying, I think you're making excuses. I know you don't know me that well. Maybe you don't want me to say this, but I think you're kind of making excuses. And this person, Patrick, came into the conversation and knew this person really well and said, they are making excuses. And here's why. And then he shared a ton of value. And then so I asked a follow-up and a follow-up and a follow-up. And people started kind of gathering around a bit. And at some point, I kind of softly said, I'm sorry, I'm asking all these questions. I'm curious. Feel free to not answer if you don't want. But how much revenue do you do a year? And he explained. And what are your profits? How much cash do you have on hand? Do you think having that much cash on hand is enough? Are you worried about runway? And over the course of what became like a 90-minute kind of master class, not only did I learn incredible things about how this person grew a $40 million service-based business, they answered every single question. They gave me, there was nothing held back. And the next day I thanked them, but people came up to me and said, like, that was amazing. And it was all natural. It was all organic. It was my curiosity. It was my interest. But I think what you'll find is if you lead with that, and if they get uncomfortable and you back off, but if you keep pushing, if you ask the question, most people will just answer you, and you can learn incredible things.
Yeah. And listeners want authentic. They don't want sound bites and high level sort of business virtue signaling when we talk about stuff. They want it to be real. And I love that you're doing that in interviews. Makes a ton of sense. Shifting gears a little bit. So I wrote this down just to get it right, but your purpose is to help others crush the fear and doubt that's keeping them from building an extraordinary life. How did you discover that purpose, and how's that playing out?
How did I discover that? I mean, I'm a father of four, as you mentioned. My eldest is 18. I have a 16-year-old son who's a junior in high school. I have a 13-year-old son who's about to become a freshman next fall, and then an 11-year-old daughter. And so I learn a lot about myself by the advice I give them and the things I correct them on, where I realize I don't want to be a hypocrite. I've realized that it's much better to be someone's cheerleader. You know, the world. I'm a bit of a cynic, and I'm a bit skeptical, and I kind of get depressed, and I kind of worry about where we're going and what's happening. But while I can guide people around me, I've realized it's not my place, even if I see 5 or 10 steps ahead of them, to kind of tell them where this is going and how it's going to work out. The world will correct them. The world is kind of harsh and kind of hard. And I just don't think there's enough cheerleaders. And so, uh, I mean, as a team leader, as a visionary or a founder, entrepreneur, as a dad, as the people in my life, I can't always show up setting the energy, setting the vibe, being the cheerleader all the time. Sometimes I'm too in my head, but I just don't think there's enough of it. And so if we can serve people, if we can allow them to take bold action and give them permission to, because often people just need permission to do what they want to do. If we can allow them to figure out what they're doing in the right or wrong and not take the learning away from them, and who knows, who am I to say whether it'll work out or not? I had a number of years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, an entrepreneur came to me because they wanted to launch a toy company focused on different, I can't even explain it. It was a bit complicated, but different pieces of food. So like if you break down like the chains that make up the different acids and the different types of carbs, like if we get really biohacking here, he wanted to launch a toy company with the dolls named after different pieces of these really complicated things to try and educate kids on why they need to be healthy and make healthy choices. And I said, well, parents are the ones buying dolls. Kids need to pull on their sleeve and say, I want that. And I can't even say the name out loud, so I don't know how they will. And I said, this is a very niche audience. And I guess I was the person who wasn't cheering them on. I was the person kind of saying like, I'm not sure this will work. I'm not sure there's a market for it. I'm not sure this is blue ocean. I'm not sure this is all the things you think it is. And I really upset them. And then they came back to me a year later and they said, see, you didn't believe in me. You were a scammer. I got this doll produced. And all I wrote back was, hey, like if I'm the bad guy in your life who managed to like motivate you enough to be that fuel, you hate me so much, but I'm the fuel that made this thing happen. Awesome. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying as a business strategist and a marketer, I wasn't sure how to take this to market for you. I wasn't sure how to cover the costs of doing so. And so that was one of those lessons again where, you know what, who am I to say whether this could work or not?
Yeah. So I think it's a great purpose. I don't know how big the problem is, but I think it's bigger than I realize it is in terms of self-doubt that people have and fear and all of it. And our good friend, Evan Carmichael, talks a lot about that. And that's a huge part of his mission to get at it. But now that I'm aware of it, it doesn't matter what face people put on. There's probably some of that going on, a little bit to a lot of it with a vast majority of the population. And when I grew up, it was more than dysfunctional. It was kind of a dangerous and toxic environment. And I was told that, as a very little kid that, even my mom telling me, I still remember this, that she was embarrassed to be seen with me in public. I mean, just really went down. So I got in the world and like, my gosh, when people look at me, they see what she tells me I am. And by the time I was kicked out of the house at the beginning of my senior year in high school, it occurred to me that my parents never knew my real dad, my mom, my stepdad. They couldn't raise themselves, let alone 5 kids. And I started thinking, in a way, I felt bad for them because what's it like to live emotionally in that state? And I got out of it pretty quick, whereas a lot of kids don't. And it's a journey to get out of it. And I've got we could talk for hours about my process and kind of what I went through. But you had kind of a similar, in some ways, childhood where you develop the self-doubt and all that because of how you were raised. How did you, and we never fully get out of it probably, but what's your journey been like? What are some big learnings there to help our listeners that are struggling with that?
Yeah. So I was, I had some of the best moments of childhood and some real challenges. And I believe it's given me a bit of a unique perspective, but the benefits were that I grew up in a German immigrant family. My grandfather, still living, 96, it's my hero. My uncles were my heroes, and they're builders. They're home builders. They're developers. They're home builders, but they could do anything and build anything. And so raised in kind of this upper middle class household where we could go to Florida in the winters, we could go up to the cottage in the summers, and it was really amazing. My mom was at home and everything was great. And then she remarried, and we had some challenges with my stepfather, and he had some mental health issues, which today I can speak about. But when you're a 7-year-old kid, you're not quite sure what's going on. There were some substance abuse issues, which again, it was a real challenging from the age of 8 till I finally moved out at 16, when I kind of said it was enough. It was hard. And a number of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I ended up seeing a therapist to try and figure some of this stuff out. And I never even realized. So, to answer your question, I think being able to speak to someone, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a therapist, I'm not a huge proponent of it, but speaking to someone is helpful, because as I was going through these dates, there was a period over the course of a year and a half or 2 years where many major things happened in my family. Like my mom almost passing away, my grandfather being in the hospital, my uncle having this terrible car accident that led to all kinds of challenges, like just many, many things happened in a very short amount of time. And it was only the therapist who said, hold on, did that all happen like between 95 and 97? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so. I guess I left my childhood home and we moved to a new community, and all these things. Yeah, I guess that happened at that time. So, I'm a huge proponent of that, but being able to have this, these role models that I could look up to, and these kind of idyllic childhood memories with, frankly, we left the city. We bought 70 acres of land when I was in grade 7 or 8. We cleared the field by hand. We got cedar logs and stripped logs and built a log home by hand out of mortar that we mixed ourselves. Like, I learned what hard work was as well. And so, I just feel that being able to have both sides of that was a real benefit. I'm not sure I'm answering your question specifically, but
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of where the self-doubt comes from, not believing in ourselves, and how we work through finally fully believing in ourselves. And my hack is, what's the value I'm trying to create? And when negative internal or external voices start challenging it in different ways, is it something I should listen to because it will impact in a way the value I'm creating? And if not, I shut it off, and now the voices go away when I don't have much of that internally anymore. And the external critics, because there's a lot of those culturally in the United States right now. It seems like a lot of folks are really good at tearing people down and finding the one thing wrong with them, as opposed to building them up and creating more value. But that's my hack that's gotten me to a place where I'm at today. And it feels amazing. And I think a lot of people get stuck and they don't get out of it. So you've gotten out of it. You're moving in a great direction.
Well, working on it. A few things have helped. I read a lot. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of things. Learning about growth mindset, realizing that I was, always stuck in a fixed mindset kind of world is helpful because I can pull myself back to it. Speaking to my grandfather, who's 96, and being able to ask him about the challenges he faced growing up the way he did in the 30s in, Lithuania, just on the border of Germany, and going through the war and moving to Canada and starting a company and seeing success and things like that. And I asked him even, when he first moved here, he was sponsored by the Lutheran Church. They brought him over as a refugee, and he spent 2 years paying off his debt and then earning enough money to bring my grandmother over. They weren't married yet. They had met just months before he left, but they were engaged. He brought her over. And in that time, they were stonemasons working on a house and on a house for a doctor. They were just laying brick. And it wasn't going well. And the homeowner went over to him one day and said, "Hey, do you know how to build a house?" And he goes, "Yeah." And they go, "Do you think this general contractor's doing a good job?" He goes, "Nah." He goes, "If I let him go, will you and your cousins build this house?" And he said, "Sure." And I asked him, I said, "Have you did you build a house at that point? He was, no. I go, you were a stonemason, you're young, 21, 22, 23, something like that. Like, I said, what made you have the confidence to say yes? And he just said, it's not helpful to be pessimistic. And that was it. And so learning some of these things and realizing that, speaking with my dad, and he gave me great advice where I asked him about some of these challenging things in his childhood. He had a really rough childhood. And I said, why don't we talk about these things? And he said, Mark, sometimes it's just not helpful. Like, I can't do anything about it. I don't enjoy the memories. And I put that behind me a long time ago. I just don't think it's helpful to bring it up all the time. And you know what? In this world we're in, where anxiety is on the rise, depression is certainly on the rise, mental health is top of mind with my teenage kids. They have friends who can't even go to high school certain days because they don't feel good, right? Like I think that started by saying therapy can help and is important. And I don't want to be toxic, but at the same time, I also have embraced a certain amount of like, well, I can't do anything about the past. What's the point in living there? Let's focus on the future. Let's just not talk about it. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but it's how people around me who are quite successful or who are years ahead of me have found they've been able to work through some really challenging past experiences.
Yeah, I think that's actually spot on, because the more you swirl in it, it can make it worse and reinforce it. That's my experience. Understanding it to kind of go through it and create even more value. I think there's value in that. But the more energy you give it, like I even think about my businesses over the years, and I learned this a long time ago, when there was some issue going on that had nothing to do with the value that we were designed to create as a business, the more energy I gave it, the worse it got. And I even coined this term. It's like the more energy you give it, you open up what I affectionately called back then the bottomless pit of emotional need. It's like, this is nuts. And so for me, it's 100%. What's the value we're focused on creating? This is why we're here. And then it gets us out of that stuff. But I do see a lot of swirling on the problems. And I even think in the last, 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, it's like you get social credits for how big of a victim you are. Like, no,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
a bigger victim, and all these things that happen. It's like, how is that helpful to focus on that? I mean, makes no sense. And folks talk about the different generations and they're different and all of it. And I look at it and say, well, I don't think human nature's changed in the last 5,000 years or all of recorded history. But what has changed is the environment, and human nature responds differently depending on the rules of engagement, whether it could be like for-profit, nonprofit, government, private, public company of all different sizes, different family cultures, same human nature, but on average, they act differently based on the rules of engagement. And so I like what you're saying. Just go forward. What value do you want to create in the world? Isn't that an interesting question? Like, what value would you like to create in the world? And I love asking kids that question. I took over a company and put in a completely separate business model in May of last year. We changed the name to Dinner Table. And in 10 months, we have, this I think is really good. It just shows there's a movement here. But we have 276,000 Instagram followers, 36,000 parents in our Dinner Table community, and growing fast. And I'm running two communities in the Phoenix area that are in person, ridiculously rewarding. And that's what we talk about. What's the value you want to create? And for the kids in these families, and I think in low-income families, it's the largest pent-up, untapped value creation potential in the country, in the U.S., probably the world, because they have the drive. And the takeaways for the kids that come to these sessions is, wow, I can really create value in the world. It's like shifting their perspective rather than I'm a victim, because that's what they're being told by politicians and other unfortunate leaders out there that are propagating this message. It's crazy to watch it. So it's I think that's the hack. Focus on value, like you're saying. Just you can't do anything about it. Let's go forward, and I think we do get out of it faster.
I hope so. To that point, I have kids who are in school, and part of the biggest challenge I think being a parent is allowing them to make their own mistakes when you would love to just be like, don't do that. Or the things that come up that happen to your kids that you have no control over. My youngest was hit by a school bus walking home last year. And thank God, he was not injured. He was not hurt, but it was a full-size school bus turning. The driver didn't see him. My son jumped out of the way at the last minute. He got hit by the bus and flown over. And so when something like that happens, as a parent, it's terrifying, and you get angry and you get upset and you worry about if this is a traumatic event for them, and is this something that's going to define them, and is this something that they're going to hold on to forever, and are we giving them support or not giving them support, or all those things. And whether it's your child or your team member or your friend or anyone in your life, I think we go through these same things. But what I think about is, and what I hope that I'm giving them is, I spent a lot of time talking to them. A year or two ago, and I'm not great at this, so I'm not bragging by any means, but a year or two ago, I started writing letters to my kids, because what I love about the biographies I read, of the founding fathers, of leaders during the Civil War, they have all of these correspondence. They have all these letters, because that was the main form of communication. And because these were quote unquote important people, they've all been saved. And I realized that I did not have this with my kids or for my kids. And there's probably things happening in their lives that they're afraid to say out loud to me, but I want a way that they can communicate with me. So I reached out to each of them, and I set this up this way. And I said, hey, it's just for you. It's just for me. No one will ever know what we say. I'm not telling you I'm going to write you every day. It's pretty sporadic, once a month, every few weeks sometimes. But here's a channel where you can tell me anything that you want. You can ask me any question that you want. And it's just for you and I. And no one else will know what we talk about in these letters. And it's just a Google Doc, so they can scroll back and have this. And it's interesting to me, because I could look at this and realize there's some gaps where I let it go for 2 or 3 months, and I feel like maybe I'm letting them down, or I'm not a good father, or, there's times we can work through things. But when other people or other kids, or when other people are out there and they react certain ways, I'm also much more forgiving to them. You spoke about people from low income neighborhoods, or I think of new Americans or new Canadians, immigrants who are moving to this country, who come from a different context, come from a different world. People do all kinds of stuff that makes me upset. But if they didn't have the support that I had, or they haven't had the success that I have, so I can just email you, like I could just reach out to you and ask you a question if I want to, or I can have you on my podcast. If they don't have that, or if they don't have someone like my kids have, where they feel like they have someone to coach them and guide them and talk to them and help reframe what's going on in their lives. When my kids come to me and say, this kid did this or this kid did that, the first thing I ask them is, I say, how do you think their home life is? And you say, well, I don't know. And I go, do you think their parents are there and supportive? Do you think they're maybe going through a divorce? Do you think they're reacting this way because something's happening in school? Do you think they struggle to read? Like I was illiterate till grade 5 and I had to hide it. Like, what do you think is happening there? And I always respond that way, because as easy and as justified as I feel getting really angry and on my high horse about some slight that went our way, the truth is we just don't know. And so if you're hearing this and you're already doing this, we have to recognize it's a benefit and we should keep going. If you don't have this or don't do this, it's something you can very easily do. And I think it's just about trying to, the old saying, like, if you don't like someone, you just don't know them well enough yet. That's what I try to do.
Yeah. There's always 2, 3, 4 other possible answers to why people are behaving the way they are. That's for sure. And I think for kids, we're more and more not letting them struggle appropriately, so they're not ready for adulthood. You and I were ready for different reasons. I was fully self-sufficient when I moved out, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But we're not letting them struggle. And this whole concept of helicopter parenting, do everything, go through it. I've been observing lately helicopter teaching. It's like, oh my gosh, these kids don't struggle at home and they don't struggle here. So now it used to be, childhood, you're a kid up until 18, then you're an adult. Now at 18, you go into the emerging adult phase, which could last to 42 before they actually before they actually become an adult. And with the best of intentions from teachers and parents, we've caused this to happen. So I think that's the single biggest thing to work on. And I'm a real advocate of, hey, working backwards, what character traits and capabilities would you like your kids to have? And as they get older, they would like to have when they launch into adulthood. And then how can we design healthy struggles today to get them ready for that? This is the gym getting ready for life, as an adult. Mark, in this conversation, it's gone by really fast. Was there anything that stood out for you, a biggest takeaway or anything super interesting?
Well, what's interesting is I haven't actually reflected on that mission or that purpose that's listed on my website. It's one of those things that you believe in, that you write, that you post, but gosh, I think I created that website 2 or 3 years ago now. And so it's not something it's not as if I'm not working towards it, but it's not posted here. It's not something I write in my journal every day. I'm busy focused on other things. So if nothing else, you've reminded me of the importance, like really the role that doubt and fear play in all of our lives. And you might say it's not something that you bump up against, but considering the clients that we work with and the people that in my life, including my kids, you've really helped remind me again of just, and even for myself, I have a few big decisions that we're making in the company that I know, but I've been waiting to pull out the trigger on. And we've talked about it and we've planned and we've strategized and it makes sense. And we've done all the rational things. And it's not even a big risk, but I realize fear is what's keeping me from just, saying right now, like, cool, we're doing it Monday morning. Here's the change. It's in place. Let's go. And so I appreciate you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I get up every day and I'm thinking about, and throughout the day, my mission. And because I'm so clear on it, driving holistic value creation behaviors in the world, because selfishly, I want a better world to age out in for my friends and family and communities that are important to me. When it gets really, really hard, it keeps me going. And I just keep pushing on it no matter what. Even when adults are freaking out around me, I'm going to keep doing this and be understanding of their fear and doubt and all of it. But I actually loved reading. I read everything I could find on you. I'm getting ready for this. And I loved reading that website and that challenge of fear and doubt. It's not completely done for me, but it's really, really small compared to what it was because I've intentionally worked on it. And I just think it's a great reminder. And I see it in most people in different ways. So thank you for that. And I think it's a very worthwhile purpose and keep going that way. If our listeners want to learn more about you, connect with you, what do you recommend?
The best place, honestly, is LinkedIn. And so you can certainly find me over on LinkedIn. My name is Mark Drager. If you want to learn more about the podcast, it's the How to Sell More podcast. Or if you want to learn about our agency, it's salesloopbrand.com.
Okay. Mark, thanks for doing this. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Oh, Lee, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, please share, leave a review. And until next time, show your value to the world.